Hello, this is Troy with Enzyme Essence, and I'm visiting with Victor Kulvinskas today. And we're going to be slightly off topic of digestion and systemic uses
Metabolism.
and purposes for enzymes today. Kind of going to delve into a little bit more spiritual.
Subtle energies.
Yeah, subtle energy, spirituality. So one of the things that I've always related to enzymes, and that's a level of consciousness. So this is very similar to what Victor mentioned earlier in one of the videos in regards to life being kind of a symphony of enzymatic reactions. So again, there has to be a level of consciousness, like an understanding, right, of the bigger picture. So when I look on the planet Earth and see the symphony of what's happening, right, from an enzymatic perspective, of course. But if you look at every especially the indigenous cultures, because I've always had an affinity for those people and the way that they chose to live their life, that it was in harmony. Like there was a level of consciousness there that was reflected in the choices that they made. So whether that's their interaction again with other living things. So every living plant contains enzymes. Every living animal contains enzymes. So when they would come into contact with those things, it was a spiritual. There was a thankfulness. There was a connection, a connectedness.
Exactly.
You were
Yep.
connected to those things. It wasn't
Even
like you.
when they slaughtered an animal, they basically slaughtered in a caring, conscientious way and also thanked the animal for sharing its vital energy that it has collected from the plant kingdom and now making it available to them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful example of that, and I just see that, and then you look even in this country, right? That then the beginning stages. I mean, how agriculture and farming played a huge role in that, and you look at, and that's why it's just so.
Some of the most brilliant people and more conscious are the farmers because they are very involved with the holism, the earth, the air, the wind, the sky, the rain, all of it. Part of their theology, as well as also knowing all the technology, which is machinery. They have to know so many things, and you got to be very conscious to be able to integrate all of this and intuitively know, I mean, at what moon cycle do you plant the seeds in order to get a major harvest, and when do you harvest when it's maximum nutrition? These are the naturalist farmers, not necessarily the GMO oriented.
That's what I was just getting at, because living in the state of Minnesota, I go, the two crops are corn and soybeans, and those are both, well over 90% GMO. So you go,
Certainly,
there's
yeah.
nothing living in these things. I mean, they're basically dead, and they're used for other things, whether that's ethanol or high fructose corn syrup. So nothing good is going to come out of that. So that's why going back to
the bee
connected
population is almost gone in those areas, and Einstein said, when bees are gone, you're going to be gone too. And, we're seeing the insects disappearing due to the impact of our technological farming systems. The basically factory farming is not the way to go.
Yeah, and some of the, Joel Robbins, right, about the consciousness. I mean, when you see how animals are raised and what's happening today, and then they're being slaughtered and how they're being slaughtered, that whole piece, and that energy, if you want to call it that, right? You're absorbing that
totally
and taking that in, and then you wonder why there's the fear and the rage and all of the different those energies that are affecting and impacting your body. I go, yeah, whoa. You need to stop and go back to the basics and get in connection with the things that are around you.
Gentle way, the way of the heart, the harmony and love. It's interesting, they had Food Inc., which is an exceptionally well documented and presented with a lot of good footage of film, and many of the audience, I'm sure, have seen it, or if you hadn't, you should. You'll see how your food is produced, and you're going to start taking a very significant interest. Or Genetic Roulette is another fantastic production that deals with the GMO impact on our agricultural and survival strategies. I mean, we're being challenged environmentally by all of this stuff, and the consciousness basically deals with that stress, that the fear, all that animals are experiencing in the slaughterhouse. You got to realize that the adrenaline is rushing in a fight-flight mode, and also the pituitary hormonal secretions, they're going to be in the blood of the animals. The Hebrew religion had some attitudes about slaughtering, sneaking up on the animal and slaughtering them so they wouldn't have this impact. And then also they said, drain the blood,
right.
Get rid of the blood.
Yep.
So they had at least reduced the stress factor. And look at, the Hebrew culture as a group, they're most spiritually, intellectually advanced and financially in abundance, because I think a lot of their practices that they had, not only the dietary laws, not that they're the best, but it's a good compromise, and there's much better ones evolving, as especially taught by the Essenes. So basically, the impact is severe, and you ingest that stuff and you experience it. I consumed, talking about connecting to enzymology during my experimenting phase, when I was looking at the different enzymes on the marketplace, there was very little 35 years ago of plant-based enzymes, and I was trying out also the pancreatin-based enzymes. Well, first of all, you open up and you smell like it smells rotting, like a
right.
mortuary, and then I would take them anyways, and because I was food addict and I needed some enzyme support on my food addict addiction. But what was interesting, I was on a plant-based diet, I took these enzymes, next day I was scared stiff of getting out of bed, full of fear, like something foreboding. I just cuddled up in a fetal position and stayed in bed that whole day, because I was taking in the fear hormones that was in that pancreatic enzymes. Well, you're taking that in when you're consuming those steaks, those pork chops, whatever you are consuming it. And that's why people, they don't trust one another. That's why war and violence is everywhere, because there's no trust. Because everybody thinks he's going to slaughter me. You don't know. That subtle energy, that consciousness permeates us. And we have ongoing, even right now, dozens of war. Then there's the violence that goes on at home. I mean, the behavior between mates and the impact that it has on our children in terms of the violence they are subject to. All of a sudden we can see how the consciousness is so radically impacted by diet. And in the Buddhist tradition, ahimsa it permeates. That means harmless, do no harm to anything like animals or to the whole planet. Make it sustainable. And basically, when you do that, you all of a sudden, consciousness expands, because as a preliminary for spiritual work, so many of the spiritual groups demand that you become a vegan. There's a good reason for it. And in the Bhagavad Gita, basically the biblical text of the Vedas, it states that sattvic diet for consciousness work, for spirituality, intellectual, philosophical, sustainable thinking, plant-based, also enzymatically active nutrition was the code that was written. Even in the Bible, if you read Genesis I-29, I have given you all the herb-bearing plants and all that. That is to be meant by food. Well, during emergencies, maybe you could slaughter some animals, right. But not. We have no emergencies. You go to the grocery stores, you got the most delightful rainbow of color, the food available, and then you can grow them at home as sprouts, as baby greens, grasses. All of a sudden, that makes no sense. We are not in a state of deprivation. And matter of fact, when we are going to be in a state of deprivation, the most expensive food to produce, if we didn't have the government tax support for the animal husbandry, your steaks would be not costing $3 a pound, or you'd be paying $48, $100 a pound, because right. The water supported, the grain industry, the legume industry are supported. They're getting free land, no taxation, all kind of government subsidies are spread out all over. It's non-sustainable.
Right. Going back to just the consciousness piece, because I see it externally, right, that we kind of talked about with the interaction that we have with plants, animals, other yes. human beings, that's there, that harmony, but also internally. I mean, I looked at, there was some very interesting reading in regards to when the DNA right? When that's forming, like when it's a single strand, and the enzymes come and cut it in half, and then there are two, pieces, and then it starts to wind and tie those pieces together, right? That it'll go through on its initial pass, right, and check and do its job. Now, if there wasn't any such thing as consciousness, I mean, what happens is these enzymes go back and double check and make sure that everything, and if there was something that they screwed up on the first time, they fix it.
That's right.
So I'm like,
if they have the resources to do it, otherwise they junk it.
Yeah. So I just thought, okay, there's a level, a knowing internally. I mean, as far as what enzymes are capable of, we have no idea. That's why it goes.
You might say God in action. You could think in terms of enzymes.
Yeah,
you're watching the creative process.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, if you look at the entire life cycle from the get-go, right, from the sperm producing that enzyme that penetrate the egg and fertilize
then produces another enzyme to zip it up so no other sperm gets in there. Yeah. What brilliant.
Yes. All enzyme based, and then you look at all through life. I mean, everything, like you said, a symphony or a orchestra of enzymatic reactions happening, and then even after you die,
it's all enzymatically recycled.
Yeah,
all of a sudden you disappear. I got a great example of this enzymatic recycling was, we had one of these howler monkeys drop dead because of electrocution from on one of the wires, and within 24 hours was completely recycled. All was left was a skull, no smell or stink. The vultures, the ants, the maggots, and also the insects, and then also the bacteria, just totally clean. I never smelled. I went past that monkey and it just kept disappearing. All of a sudden, nothing is left in the 24 hours. And my friend recycled the skull, kind of bleaching it and creating a beautiful architectural wonder out of it. It's amazing, the recycling. We need everything, and the strongest force for good, it's invisible, it's the microorganisms. And this is the culture right now when we will learn to cooperate with a microorganism, because, like 90% of our genetic material is of non-human origin. We got 100 times more microbes than cells in our bodies. And this stuff is cooperating and coordinating with all other microorganisms in a conscious way to propagate life, to make life sustainable. But as long as we keep doing the antibiotics, we keep on ingesting all kind of toxic foods that is killing our friendly bacteria, we're subject to all kind of diseases. Yeah. The whole idea is support the healthy bacteria, and they're going to support healthy consciousness.
Yeah, and if I think about, again, going back to the, like with us being here, why are we here? I mean, the whole big picture piece, so that, enzymes play such a major critical role, and for them not to be recognized is really our job here, right? Or our task, or our goal, or our objective is to bring enzymes to the world. And if we look at at least in my belief, I mean, all the scientific advancements that we've made in the last couple of decades, enzymes will never be able to be reproduced. I mean, there's an energy there, there's an enigma, there's a mystery that will always remain. That energy, where does it come from? I mean, scientists have yet to explain that. So again, kind of going back to your source and the consciousness and the creator. So I mean, it's all tied into that. So it's very, very fascinating how this whole cycle.
Associated with consciousness is, what do we do in terms of consciousness work? Two of the consciousness works that is so prevalent, that has been going on according to recorded history, is going into stillness and silence and being alone with your Creator and connecting with the Creator by way of prayers and by way of meditation. And they say, connect with the source of life, and then you become a sorcerer, and you create your resources. And it's in our thinking, our consciousness, that we created this most beautiful technology which lacks sustainability, but it's a beautiful place. What if we brought on the sustainability factor? Then we'll be able to live in a garden of paradise where we could be living in Minnesota, feel warm, having all the environmental like we had in the tropics. We could be growing all of our foods locally and everything done in a sustainable fashion. And I feel the consciousness of green businesses is all moving into this conscious direction of sustainability, because that is an issue of life and death, and again, consciousness, change and shift in consciousness. Just think in terms of consciousness. You go back to medieval days, you could go to a family function which was orchestrated by the Catholic Church, and what did they do? They had witch burning as basically the entertainment for the day, because they felt from their level of consciousness that they were helping the soul to migrate into higher states of consciousness by, you know, this kind of behavior.
Right.
And torture chambers that they had innovated. But that was level of consciousness that was very low. And we have basically a much higher level of consciousness, Gaia consciousness, that we are evolving, which is reminiscent of the seen consciousness and animism. And that was, you know, why are we here? That's a primary question that everybody asks. He says basically to tend the garden, to take care of the ecosystem. And what is our job? To make it sustainable. And he says, who are we? Basically, we're children of Earth and the sky, or the solar interest. These energies brought together bring forth. In the Bible, it says we are created out of the dust. Dust and energy coming from the zodiac, and which influences our whole conscious behavior. That's why each one of us are so different and unique perspective of the star system, because of the electromagnetic fields. They alter our behavior, our emphasis, our consciousness. Just like you see on a magnet field, you have a magnetic field on iron filings, they'll form a certain pattern. Well, there's all kind of energy, gravitational, electromagnetic fields coming out of each one of our planets, as well as out of the solar systems and the galaxies. And they're all creating consciousness influence of directions of our evolution, and they're also uniting us into symphony. I recall right now reading of many different journals on mysticism and also on basically prophecy, and the thing that they predict is that we're coming to a level of one mind. Right now, basically, where will be no more competition, it'll be cooperation instead, and we will be sharing our data more than by way of internet. Right now, you know, within seconds we can be communicating in every kind of language due to Google's translators, and carry on at one minute and start problem and solution orientation direction. But there's another level, which is basically connection on a consciousness. We're all tiny little computers in our head. And this also has ability to have basically telekinesis, telecommunications, that is possible, that we start feeling and experiencing. Many individuals right now, I mean, in terms of consciousness, they'll pick up the phone and mother's calling, and they don't have the caller ID or anything. They say, hello, mother, because they already felt her mental energy thinking of them and calling them, and they picked it up, and the biological communication is becoming the way, and that has to do with no time or space. It's that at-one-ment that we're moving into. So it's very exciting times. I mean, and you know what? In the Essene tradition, this was all predicted. In the Book of Jubilee, and that's part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it states that a time will come when the children will once again study the laws and follow the commandments of nature. And there will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more aging, and all shall live for the Methuselan type of age, for thousands of years, in a state of serving the creation and creating a wonderful, sustainable type of world. Of course, at a much lower population possibly, though on a raw food enzymatic nutrition, you could sustain 10 times larger population than it could be on the SAD diet or the commercialized diet, because it is much more productive and also has basically requires very little because it's in an efficient packaging, consciousness packaging. When you have enzymatic nutritional foods, they have in the food itself all the enzymes needed to pre-digest the food.
Right.
But once you heat treat it, once you put it into animals, and then you slaughter the animals, you don't have that configuration.
Yeah. So I just always like to go back to the responsibility starts here. I mean, that's what I appreciate about Victor and the relationship that he has to himself, that he's walked the talk. He is what he's talking about, kind of like Gandhi, right? That he wanted to be in practice before he would tell somebody, oh, do that. He goes, well, I need to do that first. Yeah, so you're always starting over here. So that's why, you know, you get conscious people together and they start attracting one another, and then movements happen and things change rather quickly. So it always starts here at home. So that's why, you know, with our responsibility, our accountability, what we're doing, everything starts, you know, from an enzymatic level. So that's what really Enzyme Essence is all about, hence the name, you know, the
it's
essence
a beautiful
of enzymes.
name, and connects again to the scene concept because of their essence.
Yes.
They were into the fundamentals, and you know, they were children of sun and the earth itself, and they were here to tend the garden. And we got to come back to that perspective. Right now, it's the greatest type of message, and we're creating so many deserts on the planet Earth. Yet you can go and look up basically greening of the desert. Look up YouTube. It shows how deserts can be green without sophisticated technology or anything the way the scenes did it. And you can create life in them places that is totally impossible. There's life everywhere, microbial. You work with the microbes. That is really the whole essence. Learning how to work with the largest biomass, about 95% of the enzymatically active biomass, namely life forms, is invisible. They're like ghosts, and they're the strongest influence. I mean, they can create pandemics and wipe out 80% of the human culture, you know. And at the same time, they are your greatest allies. They create all kind of beautiful products.
Yeah, beautifully said.